Market Empire is happy to have you back. It is believed that 1 million people lost money as a result of the FTX collapse. Thousands of them lost their whole life savings. Since Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme in 2008, the FTX fraud may be the biggest and worst we've seen. When Bernie Madoff's fraud was revealed, he knew it was over. He pled guilty and received a 150-year jail term. 12 years later, he passed away in prison. Despite the fact that FTX's scam was on par with Madoff's, SBF is still at large and residing in opulent accommodations in the Bahamas. He has since given a number of interviews in which he desperately tries to deflect accountability for the $8 billion fraud by blaming others but himself. His hour-long interview at the New York Times Deal Book Summit was the biggest media appearance he had to date. In this video, we'll examine some of the interview's most egregious factual inaccuracies in an effort to estimate how much time he'll likely spend in jail. The primary problem at FTX is that approximately $8 billion in client money was transferred to SBF's hedge fund Alameda Research. Alameda Research invested in FTT and other cryptocurrencies, resulting in significant lawsuits and leaving FTX customers to pick up the tab. How FTX clients' funds get up to Alameda is the first major point that needs to be addressed in order to determine SBF's potential criminal responsibility. The second major question is what SBF knew and when did he know about this?
Is it possible that Alameda had this loan of such a large size?
So there's that piece from the terms of service, but there were a number of other parts of the terms of service and a number of other parts of the platform on top of that. There is the borrow lending facility, where users were lending billions of dollars of assets to each other, collateralized by assets on the exchange. You had obviously futures contracts where there are leveraged positions on.
He makes reference to the fact that FTX had a lending option where users may choose to lend their money on the platform. Some of these monies were ultimately borrowed by Alameda Research. According to the website of FTX, lenders don't have to worry about counterparty risk because FTX guarantees all transactions even if the borrower is liquidated. In retrospect, this was undoubtedly false because FTX had no way to cover the $8 billion in damages from the Alameda deal. Even consumers who didn't use the lend service still found themselves carrying the bag, which is an even worse concern. This indicates that Alameda Research acquired customer deposits that, based on FTX's own terms of service, were not permitted to be lent. The explanation provided by SBF for what took place is so ridiculous as to almost be amusing.
When we scroll back to 2018, or to 2019, I guess, FTX didn't have bank accounts. It didn't have any bank accounts globally. We were trying to get them. It took us a while, took us a few years. There are customers who wanted to wire money to FTX. And so I think in the meantime, some of them were wiring money to Alameda Research to get credited on FTX. And I think that was a substantial sum. And I think that the FTX's internal accounting did correctly, effectively try to debit Alameda for those funds, but it didn't happen in the primary account. And so it didn't happen, it created a discrepancy between the display of the account and what was really going on there. And I'm still looking into exactly how that worked mechanically.
Alameda had a bank account in 2019, whereas FTX, for some reason, was unable to get one. Customers of FTX were really wiring money to Alameda Research as bank accounts when they believed they were making a payment to FTX. FTX would then receive an IOU from Alameda Research stating that this money should actually belong to FTX. Customers' funds were supposed to be moved from Alameda to FTX once FTX was able to form its own bank account. After some time, FTX was able to form its own bank account, but Alameda never deposited the funds. Instead, they invested them in speculative cryptocurrency, leaving depositors holding the bag. Wire fraud, which is a felony punishable by up to 20 years in jail if it was committed with intent, is what SBF is discussing. Why then is SBF ready to acknowledge this? given that he had previously asserted that he was not operationally involved with Alameda research and hence he had no awareness of this at the time. After founding FTX, SBF established Alameda Research, which he still controls in large part today. After that, he named Caroline Ellison, who is rumored to have been his romantic companion and a confessed drug user, as CEO of Alameda. SBF said that he was ignorant of what was happening at Alameda, and that if Alameda had committed any wrongdoing, it would have been Ellison's problem rather than his.
I mean, look, I wasn't running Alameda. I didn't know exactly what was going on. I didn't know the size of their position. A lot of these are things I've learned over the last month that I learned as I was sort of frantically digging into this on, November 6th, November 7th, November 8th. Obviously that's a pretty big mistake on Mark. That's a pretty big oversight that I wasn't more aware. I think I was, scared of, I was nervous because of the conflict of interest about being too involved.
SBF claims that since he is the CEO of FTX, he did not want to become operationally involved in Alameda since there would appear to be a conflict of interest. It seems impossible to own a $10 billion hedge fund and never have the time to analyze the positions it is taking, given that Alameda had over $10 billion in assets and was expected to be extremely profitable. According to a Wall Street Journal inquiry, one person who doesn't agree with this explanation is Caroline Ellison. According to Ellison, 2 other executives were also informed of the decision to transfer customer cash to Alameda in a video meeting that she released in November. We are unable to independently confirm Caroline Ellison's claims as true, but we can confirm that SBF is lying when he claims he was unaware that Alameda had borrowed so much money from FTX depositors. However, is this actually the case?
Let's talk about Collateral. Because I think this entire experience has been a revelation for a lot of people about what might be collateral. And clearly you were using FTT and Solana and other tokens as collateral, and part of that required you to mark them in a specific way, a value to them.
Yep.
Do you think that you were marking them properly?
In Alameda's case, I don't think I was marking them the way I wish I had from a risk perspective. In my head, I was looking at a 30% down move over a few-day period as a sort of like extreme tail case event that, we had seen once before. And then, what happened here was a 95% down move over the course of a year, and a 60% down move over a few-day period with very little liquidity, and all happening at once in all of these coins in a correlated fashion, in which hedges didn't mean as much also because this was a specific crash on assets associated with Alameda Research rather than all assets.
The fact that he was performing these calculations indicates that he was aware that Alameda had posted enormous sums of FTT tokens as collateral because the down move was so much worse than anticipated, which is why FTX filed for bankruptcy. This completely contradicts earlier comments I made in the same interview regarding his being unaware of the size of Alameda's position. It can be quite challenging to maintain the integrity of your story and avoid contradicting yourself when you amass a mountain of lies. SBF looked to become more uneasy and struggled to respond to questions as the interview carried on. The more the interview carried on, the more his pushy behavior revealed how scared he was. SBF's responses were evasive and contradictory, and everything he said in these public interviews may and will be used against him in court. So it's unclear what he was trying to achieve. At this point, he probably wishes he had followed his lawyer's advice to refrain from speaking publicly for that reason. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, we appreciate your time and we will see you in the next Market Empire video.